We have Chris Peischl, Chris Greb with us tonight, two very experienced guys in Lehigh County. They're here to talk to us about mass casualty incidents, also referred to as MCIs. How you doing tonight, guys?
Good.
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
So when you reached out a couple weeks ago to come on and talk about MCIs, tell the audience, why is that important to you?
Well, if you look in what's happening today, MCIs are going to happen. People are going to come and look at your service. And when they see your service, you want to show them in a positive light that you positively impacted the outcome of the patients. They're not going to come for the single person that fell down, heart attacks. But if you have a large accident, multiple patients, they're going to look at it and they're going to say, you did great, or they won't say anything at all.
Why is bringing awareness to this topic, mass casualty incidents, important to you?
EMS makes a difference in every day, every incident, and at mass casualty incidents, how we handle them changes the outcomes for the patients. More people survive at well-run incidents. For the last 20 years, we've been working together to bring training to people who want training, very honestly, but just not really sure where to start. So I think that one of our goals from talking to you today is that, you know, the time we've put in isn't in vain. We want to make sure that when we move on, more people pick it up and continue training for it. It's really easy to kind of forget the lessons learned from previously. So, you know, we've put a ton of time into kind of taking other people's stuff, if you will. Back in the day, many founders before us, you know, came up with the ideas that are involved with MCI management, and we've kind of helped bring them locally to this area, and then started to spread it out a little bit. But realistically, anybody anywhere can get better at this. They can put the time in, spend a little, learn, and go out there and practice.
And passing on what we've learned to the next generation. As EMS rolls over and new people come out, share what we've learned.
This is a topic that you go out, you teach, you talk about lessons you learned over those 20 years of EMS or MCI training that you've been working and learning about. Lesson one is you have here, MCI preparedness makes MCIs go better.
Taking the time to prepare works. You know, if you put the time in, it gets better. What we've noticed in this county is that over 20 years, we've gotten better. The events today tend to go better than they did 20 years ago. So I think the lesson number one we have is MCI preparedness works. It's worth putting in the time.
Just take the time when you have the opportunity to practice, whether it's on everyday calls or at the larger drills. Don't be afraid to go out and practice.
Something, we don't know when, but it's coming. Like something's going to happen, and hopefully it never comes. And was that you who talks about that all the time? Like, like
I think don't you say something like, if I spend my whole career preparing for MCIs and
it never happens.
It never happens, and then I walk away and everyone calls me a fool, that's just perfectly fine. I think that's what they say about you, Peischl.
Yeah.
Grabby, talk to me about what you mentioned earlier, like informal leaders, like what you were saying about finding that champion.
Somebody in your service, anybody. It can be the executive director, it can be the second week EMT. Somebody needs to be a champion. We're going to be better at this tomorrow than we are today. Put the time in, look at your equipment, take some training, learn from other incidents. Anybody can do that. But if nobody does, then nobody does.
And people are looking for the training. We've gone through the whole eastern part of Pennsylvania, probably out to the center part of the state, New York line down to outside of Philly, that people want to do the training. They want to receive the training.
Grabby, you have here, MCI preparedness is a local process. What do you mean by that?
Well, basically, I think, honestly, that whole first slide could pretty much be summed up in that, what I said. Like, basically, that you just got to put the time in. It works. Somebody in your agency needs to be the champion. You need a champion. Someone needs to say, you know what, once a month, once a week, whatever it is, we're going to do something to prepare for this. We're going to check our kits. We're going to do a little mini triage thing. We're going to watch a video. We're going to study something. Whatever it is, as long as you're doing something, you're getting better. And what we've seen is that actually works.
All right, that'll flow us into lesson two. What you have is we can all work well together.
So our lesson 2 in our presentation there is that, there's a lot of people in local EMS that probably have voodoo dolls of me. But when I do show up on those MCIs, I've yet to been kicked out of there. No one said, boy, that freaking Grebby's here. He's a jerk. We get rid of him. So even though they might think that in their normal day, when these events occur, we can, and we will be able to work together to make it happen. So don't set out in your training to think that, well, it's not going to work because we don't get along with XYZ. When it's the glass full of hemophiliacs into the, oh, I messed that up.
Maybe we won't cut that one.
Oh, man. When it's the bus full of hemophiliacs into the glass truck, everyone's going to work together. And that's kind of one of our points, that don't be afraid to try to work with your neighbors ahead of time, because when it happens, you're going to have to work together, and you're going to.
Yeah, and that just shows where we came from. So you have a municipal service working with a volunteer service, a suburban service, to develop a plan, to develop a training that can be used across EMS, no matter what the background is. So you can work with your neighbor.
Lesson 3, you have preparedness is not a one-time deal.
So we kind of actually covered that in one. You might even just be able to skip right over that one, I think, maybe.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I mean preparedness is ongoing. You don't do it once and then stop. You have to continue to prepare, making sure your kits are set up, terminology.
Skills, plans, procedures, equipments all grow stale or expire if not practiced or checked. I think that's a lot of preparedness there.
In our training sessions, we focus on the 4 positions. EMS is great at taking care of patient. Now you have multiple patients. You have to step back and tell people what you want them to do. That's where people come out of their comfort zone. And that's what we focus on to get them into that habit. How can they get out of their comfort zones to make these function a little smoother? And how can you do that on a regular basis to become more comfortable doing those roles?
Your next points here for MCI training would be management buy-in.
Absolutely. Someone in the organization, be it a true manager or an informal leader, needs to take the role of this. They need to run with it and think it's important. And when they do, hopefully the management, the true management of the organization, does as well. You got to commit the resources. You don't got to send people to MCI drills every day, but you got to understand, like Chris said, when these things happen, number one, in my view, is that what we do, what EMS does, is going to make a difference, and it's going to be scrutinized by a lot of people. So if your management is worried about that or concerned that they're not going to be ready, then you just got to put the time in. That's really what it comes down to.
I think it's a great point because, the news station isn't going to come out for that one patient or maybe 2 patients, but you get a busload of people that get into an accident and 10 of them go to the hospital. That usually makes the news the next morning.
Yeah, and in Lehigh County, we didn't start with everybody, oh, this is a great idea, let's jump on the bandwagon. We started small with a couple of services, and the rank and file were like, well, why aren't we doing what they're doing? How comes they seem more organized when it comes to these types of events? And then management of those other agencies started implementing what we were discussing and training and teaching. But you need that individual, you need that cheerleader to push the needle.
Lesson 4, not every person knows how to use every piece of equipment on your ambulance. Feel confident in their ability. This feels a little bit like preparedness to me.
Yeah, so I think the point of lesson 4 is that people like us, maybe managers, people that feel comfortable with their MCI skills and equipment, you kind of forget that other people don't. And we did a little thing during EMS week where we would go around and try to catch people using triage tags. We'd ask them, hey, if you triage tag your patient coming to the ER, we'll give you a little gift card. And I would go to the ERs and try to catch people, and they're like, oh, this is stupid, we're not doing it. So what I did was I changed it up, and I said, hey, how about this? If you can find your MCI kit on your ambulance, I'll give you and some couldn't. Like, literally just couldn't find it. When we first started, we went around to all the ambulances that would let us in the county and get all the equipment set up the same. And, we would find the MCI kits back in the old ambulances. You would have the little compartment in the walkthrough where the electrical stuff is and it says don't store anything in here, that's where the MCI kit would often be found, just waiting to catch on fire. So, people, it's easy to think that everyone else knows what's going on if you know what's going on, but often that's not the case.
And it's simple things that even a manager can do that doesn't cost any money. Hey, this quarter, go through your disaster bag. Maybe the next quarter, a different shift goes through their disaster bag just to see where is it, what's in it, how many triage tags do you have. And then here's a 10 patient MCI triage thing. Let's go through it, triage them, and let's talk about it.
So when I think about these bags you're talking about, we're not really talking about bags stuffed full of first aid equipment and gear. We're talking a bag with vests to identify the officers that you should be setting up to be organized in these events, clipboards, the triage tags. I saw the new triage or the newer triage tags.
Yeah, and maybe just something for the triage unit supervisor, right?
Transport officers going to need all those papers to write down to keep accountability. So we're not talking about a bag stuffed full of equipment. Like it's mostly to keep yourself organized to run one of these scenarios
and to direct other people. So if you're the EMS director, you're directing other people. If you're treatment, you're directing people to do the treatment. Again, that's where people get out of their comfort zone. So they're used to taking care of a patient. Now you have to tell 10 other providers to go take care of patients. That's where people struggle. And this is what our training focuses on, is getting people comfortable in those roles.
Are the triage tags, are they new or something?
Yeah.
Like they came out with new ones. Do you find them a little bit confusing, more confusing than they were?
Yeah, I think you can use any triage tag system you want. The ones that this state is currently using, they're a folding system. Before that, there was a rip-off system. There's wrist systems out there. The truth is, it doesn't really matter what you use as long as the people that use it know how to use it.
That's true.
So in whatever region you're in, work with your neighbors, say, hey, we like this one, and go with it. I think that's actually one of our other lessons, is that the idea is the same, right? In any MCI, you're going to have somebody in charge. You're going to have someone do triage, treatment, and transport. But the exact how you do it, the colors of the vest, in our region, the colors are all the same, right? Blue is the person in charge. Orange is treatment. Red is triage. Green is transport. If you have something else, that's fine. As long as everybody's on the same page with it. Same thing goes with triage tag. Same thing goes with the method of triage you're doing. There's a lot out there. There's START. There's SALT. There's probably 30 other ones. And, realistically, as long as everybody's on the same page and doing it, it doesn't really matter too much as to which one you're using.
That makes sense. I try not to be partial to like the things I used and like what I'm used to, but I like the rip off ones, the older ones that had the.
Oh, they definitely had advantages.
Yeah.
We found over the years by using them, but the key is we used them into training. So we found ways to make them more efficient for what the grand scheme was of tallying patients and all those other kind of stuff that the triage supervisor needs to do. These are a little bit more cumbersome, right? Folding them around, getting the right color. But that's, what we found is we did a drill. Somebody had the old tags and they came out, they tagged them with the old tags, and the newer EMTs are like, what are these things? Because they never saw them before, because this is about 8 years that we've implemented these new tags.
So I think that conversation flows into your next lesson. MCI principles are generally the same across the country. So would you say that there is a standard when it comes to running an MCI, a mass casualty incident?
A standard by somebody has to direct the EMS. Somebody has to be in charge of triage and treatment and transport. However you do that. So you can have, if it's fire base, you can have a battalion chief or whatever run EMS. The key is to understand that this is not an everyday call.
We went to a national registry system where, in my mind, in my opinion, that is, everyone should be learning the same then. So when I ask standard across the country, in most EMT books and curriculum or things like that, do they have chapters about this, of how they should go and how new EMTs should be learning this and how we should all approach them so we're all on the same page?
Yeah, yes, there's EMS. They don't call them EMS director. They'll say somebody in charge of EMS branch that falls within the NIMS incident command structure. They'll have somebody treatment and triage and transport. So the concepts are there. It's just how it's implemented in each different part of the country is a little different because you have different resources, right? You go someplace where New York, outside of New York, where they have a whole bunch of ambulances, where you go to someplace in Bradford County where it's going to take you 30 minutes to get your second ambulance.
Yeah, I guess maybe a better word to use other than standard, it would be protocol. Like we run off protocols, like a piece of paper says that this is how you should do this, or, what do you think about that? They're not opinions, that like the protocols are, this is how it goes.
Yeah, and I think when we go out and teach at other counties, we talk about what we've done working with our county and how we got them to adjust their protocols so that the there's less work for the EMS director. So calling for resources, right? There was a county call for 15 ambulances, and they're like, well, who do you want me to send? Find 15 ambulances, right? That's what your job is. You're a resource person, right? And then developing that rapport with your comm center. Here's what we need you to do. Don't worry about notifying the hospitals. Go find me ambulances. And if you're in a rural or a area where your ambulances aren't close by, then you're going to have to work a little harder, have something pre-planned.
How do you feel about this lesson topic?
I think one of the things in there is to realize, the vast differences in EMS systems. There are many EMS providers who will show up at an incident that completely overwhelms them, but there's not a supervisor. There's not somebody that's been with 10 or 15 years of experience coming anytime soon. People will get there. Like, more people will show up. Like you said, I always show up. But it's going to take time. And if you're in one of those areas where you don't have a supervisor on duty, or you just don't have a lot of ambulances around you with people with experience, you got to be ready to get it set up right from the beginning. What starts well ends well, all those same things we teach in fire service and almost everything, right? The first 10 minutes is how the next 10 hours are going to go. However you want to say it, it's important that everybody, from the brand new EMT coming out of class to the supervisor that's been on the street for 30 years, has the same ideas of how it's going to work. You don't want the brand new EMT coming out and saying, well, in class, we learned that we do this. And then the next guy shows up and he says, no, you do it this way. And the next guy, and then by the time the fourth person shows up and you try to do some transfers of command, the whole thing's messed up. No ambulances are lined up the right way. Patients are sitting there dying, and we're arguing over, what we're going to call the treatment area. That's not what you want. So I think in that lesson, that's kind of one of the parts as well, that everybody from the very beginning to the top of the line got to at least be somewhat on the same page, and neighbors should be on the same page, right? So your county, maybe your region, whatever it is, should be using the same types of tags, should have the same ideas.
Lesson 6 in your training, you talk about when an MCI occurs, you should call early, call often.
Yeah, so we can learn from the fire service. So fire gets dispatched to a structure fire. They pull out. They see the header in the distance. They're like, wow, this is going to be a big one. They call for a second alarm, right? They get there. It's a guy burning a pile of leaves. EMS, you get there. They're telling you there's 5 patients. You look at your partner, and I could put one on the bench seat, one on the litter, maybe a captain's chair. I'll get a refusal. We'll take care of this. Whereas in reality, is if you call those resources earlier, right, you have less work to do. You assign other ambulances those patients, number one. And number two is, if one of those patients is really critical and you're going to need additional assistance, if you wait 10 minutes to call, it's 10 minutes longer you're there with that critical patient before somebody's going to come and help you.
And you get practice doing it. Even if you don't need all those ambulances at the end of it, at least you had practice in going through the process of calling for more resources, thinking about where they're going to line up, how you're going to do a treatment area. Because we often say, if you can handle a 5-patient accident, you probably can handle a 51.
Yeah, my mind goes to a place where, like, we're mean to each other, and it's like, if you call for a bunch of ambulances If you call for a bunch of ambulances that you don't need, you're going to get made fun of. And if you don't call for a bunch of ambulances and you need them, like someone's going to have something to say about it. But I think the right thing to do is have those ambulances starting towards you early.
How long is it going to take you to get an ambulance to show up at your scene? 10 minutes. In that 10 minutes, you can determine, do I need them or don't I need them? And then you recall them.
You taught me that. Like, start them. Like,
Yeah.
and if you once you start doing your scene survey and things like that, and you start, oh, okay, this is the burning pile of leaves. Like, we'll start recalling them.
Right. But if you have that critical patient that is truly teetering on good or bad outcomes, you're going to want that help there that much faster.
Yeah, I agree.
Fortunate in this area because you can get a lot of ambulances relatively quickly. Other places, like you said, like where my parents live up north, it's going to take you 25 to 30 minutes to get your first ambulance.
Yeah, and that's, you got to go, people like, you can't trust the comm center. Well, the comm center is the only person who has the most information as you're responding. And if it sounds bad, it probably is bad until you proven otherwise.
They're impressive up there, though. Like, even a medical call, they know that they're out there. And it's like, all these lessons flow into each other. Like, you got to work with your neighbors. Like, people start coming out of the woodwork. Like, they're driving their own cars and things like that. They have first aid bags, everything like that, because they know that help is kind of far away.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because we were outside of Bloomsburg or somewhere up there, and they asked a question about, I show up in my car, I'm the first one there because I'm a responder. What am I supposed to do? Figure out how many patients you have and call for more help, right? Well, I'm just a first responder. You're the trained provider on scene that if people are looking for help. Call for more help, right? Have somebody come there to relieve you.
Yeah, if there's any good that you can do is, we need more trucks, we need more help, and start getting them.
Yeah, that's probably the most important thing is especially when where they were telling us where they live and how they respond because of their rural nature. You're it. If you don't want to be it, don't show up.
7 is, the EMS director has to make their plan, and they have to share their plan, and they have to share their plan succinctly, if that's a word, right? So
succinctly,
succinctly, I think it is. Yeah. They have to share their plan clearly
Mm-hmm.
so that everybody understands it. And I think what we've actually switched to teaching more of over the years is that if you're not in charge, you have to follow that plan, because on an average day, all of us can come up with a better plan, right? And no matter what plan you come up with, Ed, I can come up with a better one, but so can he. So if we all do our own thing, it turns into the mess that people think MCIs often are. So as important it is for the EMS director, the person in charge, to tell their plan and share their plan and be clear about their plan, it's equally as important for the other people coming to respect their plan and follow their plan and not try to interject your own stuff. We often say, if there's a safety concern, you absolutely should bring it up. But other than that, at the debriefing is when you can talk about, well, we could have done this, we could have done that, because everybody on that scene has a different idea. You can only do one thing. It's only going to go one way. And people just tend to want to do their own thing, and that's why they end up being a mess sometimes.
And when we do the hands-on portion of the program, the first one usually goes slowly because it's very easy for me to see what you're doing and say, I can do it better. And it actually bogs down the whole process. And then as we get to the second one and the third one, people, what we call stay in their lane, and it really starts to flow smoothly, smoother. It really starts to flow smoother as they get in the habit of doing what you're told. It's safe. Let's talk about it at the debriefing.
I think that, again, our last in the weeds lesson, if you will, that we want to share with people is MCIs are different. Somebody needs to think to be in command. On your average ambulance call, no one's thinking about being in command. You're thinking about taking care of the patient, and that's the right thing to do. At a mass casualty incident, somebody needs to think about being in charge and telling others what to do. It seems counterintuitive, but if that doesn't happen, the resources that do show up aren't getting used the best. So if you have, just a real quick example, right? Let's say you have 10 patients total and you've got 5 really sick ones over here and 5 not so sick over there. If the person in charge isn't directing, the ambulances that show up may very well go to the non-sick ones, not realizing that they're over here. So somebody has to take command, and you got to think differently. You got to put a different hat on. In my class, I like to take my hat and turn it around backwards to make people think. You got to think differently. I think that's, again, our last really, in the weeds lesson, if you will, is for the providers out there, for a mass casualty incident. I think I said, think differently, share your plan, and call early and call often are probably the 3 most important things for your provider level folks to share. And remember,
I kind of took it as like, think differently is like these, you might have to adapt and overcome, think of new plans, or like what, in a way, I don't want to like confuse everybody, but the situation's always going to be different. You might have to make a different plan, or how you trained and imagined it was going to go in your mind. You're going to have to make a new plan because that might not work because of the situation.
Yeah, well, the plan changes based on the specifics of the location. The plan is always the same. You have to assign people to do their job, and then you have to trust them to do their job.
Like the structure of the plan
correct.
is always the same.
Right.
I think the EMS director, the person in charge, what we see is that their first 5 or 10 minutes is super busy. But after that, once everyone's doing their job, as long as you assign people to do their jobs, that is where you get to think what you're thinking about, where, okay, now what happens if the firemen lay hose across the way I want to drive my ambulances? What happens if this hospital can't take patients? What happens if there's a secondary device, in a terrorist type event? I think that's also a very good point. The EMS director needs to be thinking about those things. And normally, past the first 10, 15 minutes, they have a little bit of time to think, hey, this is working. Now let's think about plan B and C.
When we talk about EMS command or EMS director, it's different. People think of fire command. And fire command, the fire officer walks around, does the 360. If the EMS director does that, somebody's going to eventually grab them and say, take care of this patient, because I think this patient is the sickest, or this is my loved one. And if the EMS director gets involved, the other resources are going to show up. And like Chris said earlier, if they're not directed to the proper place, they may go to where the least sick patients are. So we teach the triage does the 360, goes out, finds the patients, comes back and report. And the EMS director can then tell where the other resources are going to go. Because in the fire side, they have standard run. They run with the same people over and over again. In this situation, one ambulance A may be first in. The next ambulance may be your neighbor 2 services away because they just happen to be close by that you're not familiar with. But you have to still direct them, and you can't direct them while you're out there taking care of patients.
It makes a lot of sense. You get sucked in.
I mean, use it or not, but I remember an incident on a local highway, and the fire chief was looking around trying to say, where do you want the second helicopter to land? And the person in charge was laying on the ground intubating someone in the middle of the highway. Mm-hmm. And there probably was someone else on that scene who could have been intubating the patient, but that person's job was really to be able to help figure out where the next helicopter was going to have to land. So it's certainly a tough, it's a tough role. It's tough to get out of that patient treatment area because that's what we do every day. But someone needs to step back and take control of an incident, take command.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, it's hard to step over that person and be like, this isn't my role right now. I mean, and it sounds kind of corny or cliche, but if you stop what you're supposed to be doing or not doing your job, the whole incident could, or more people could be
outcomes
harmed.
For more patients could be worse.
Yeah, that's
because
what I was trying to
no one's in charge of everybody, right? I mean, when you go to an incident, it's very easy to think if you find a really sick person that's the sickest one.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case. And we've seen that numerous times at incidents where, the people screaming the loudest are normally not the ones the sickest. MCI preparedness works. If you put the time in, you can get better at it. So put the time in. Just a little bit every month. Spend a little time, like we said before, going through your equipment or something like that. take a class, whatever it is, but put the time in, because when you get the bad one, in your career, you're only going to have so many calls you remember. I personally remember the really good ones and the really bad ones. You're going to remember the MCI, and you don't want to remember it as you weren't prepared. So put the time in.
And it doesn't have to be hours on hours. It can be mentally preparing, knowing where your bag is, knowing what's in your bag, and finding a way to practice to get you out of your comfort zone so you become comfortable in any of those 4 roles that we talked about.
Well, I really appreciate you guys coming on tonight and talking to us about mass casualty incidents. I wouldn't rather have this conversation with anybody else. A lot of experience here, years of training, years of experience. So thank you guys for coming out. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.